What up, what up? What up, what up? Just gonna wait here for a bit until everybody gets on. And give people a few minutes. Make sure to join the Hangout. So there's a link on the YouTube. If you're looking at the YouTube video, there should be a link in the description and also in the live chat to access it on the Hangout. And accessing it on the Hangout's a little bit better than on YouTube than just seeing it on YouTube, because yeah, you can chat back, right? So if you're on this, go ahead and type 1 in the chat. Give me a 1 in the chat if you are viewing this. Gonna wait for some people to join. Going hard in the paint. Huh. Still can't see myself on the live feed. Let's try to refresh it and see what happens. Oh, there I am. Hey, cool. Cool. If you guys are here, if somebody's here, just push type 1 in the chat. 1 in the chat, type 1. Be like, yo, what's up? I'm here, I'm listening. You guys can watch it on YouTube if you like, but it's better to watch it on Google Hangouts. So if you're in YouTube, be sure to check the link, click the link. We'll get started in a second. Yo. Oh. Go ahead and type a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. What up, everybody? We're just going to wait a little bit until a few more people get on here. How's it going, guys? If you guys can hear me, just type a 1 in the chat, like push 1 in the chat. All right, got 1. Cool. We're gonna get started pretty soon. Just gonna wait a little bit, maybe a couple more minutes until people join. Just chilling. I'm back in Tokyo now. For those of you guys who've been watching all the videos and everything, as I ran around Osaka and Fukuoka and everything, it's been a crazy month and a half or so. But yeah, back in Tokyo now. It's been a pretty fun little run around. Let's see. Still trying to figure out. I haven't used this very often, so I'm trying to figure out how to. Yeah. Right. Bum, bum. Got 1-1. Just a couple more minutes. We'll get started. Hmm. Audio mute. Audio mute. Bum bum. That was weird. It like auto detects the sound or something. Figure this out. All right, guys. What up? What up? If you guys can hear me, just go ahead and type 1 in the chat. We'll get started pretty soon. I'm gonna mute people, mute everybody, until question time. Just because otherwise it's gonna like freak out and show you guys videos and everything. All right. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum. Let's see. We're gonna start it at like maybe like 9:10. We'll kick it off. Format, view, present. Screen share. Bum, 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 bum. All right. Seems like people having some trickiness with joining. All right, guys. I hope you guys can all hear me. I think I got a 1, so I'm guessing I'm guessing you guys can hear me. If you can't hear me, please make some noise in the chat or something. Please let me know if you're having trouble, if you can't hear me or anything like that. Actually, I'll type that out. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube, do go ahead and join the Google Hangouts. It's probably a little bit better. You can chat with us, so it's gonna be a little bit more fun. All right, just posting this everywhere, make sure everybody knows. There we go. Cool. All right, escalation. So we're going to talk a little bit about escalation. Basically, the idea here being, I wonder if I can get my webcam to show up here. Maybe not. Okay. So escalation, obviously this happens when you've pulled a girl back to your place and you're trying to make things happen with them, right? Now, obviously there's good, better ways and worse ways to do it, but the most important thing, obviously, is that you just do it. I remember having a lot of dates where I would take girls back and I would be like thinking too much. I'd be like, I don't know how to, escalate. It's like a little bit, she's sitting a little bit far away and I don't know, I was thinking in my head, maybe she doesn't like me. Maybe it's like, maybe I should just wait and like try to get her the next time. And we're sitting there back at my house. She's happily come back with me, but I just built up all these things in my head. And in the end, I just didn't make a move, right? So obviously this is the wrong way to go about it. That's really the main way is that you just don't take action. And I know it's there's a lot of nervousness about, especially like the first kiss. Guys, myself included, it's like it's easy to kind of build it up to be something more than it really is, right? Or to make it seem like the first kiss is like the moment of truth where everything is either it's gonna go down or it's not, right? And either you've wasted a night or it's gone well, right? So hopefully over the course of this of the webinar, we're going to go over that a little bit, kind of break it down so it doesn't seem like such a, like the kiss is just the main thing. And we're going to talk a little bit more about different ways you can kind of ease into the escalation over the course of the night. And this is mostly for dates, but you can also apply it to, if you're pulling a girl from the street or from a party or something like that back to your house, the same kind of rules can apply. All right, let's jump into it. So pre-escalation leadership. So this is kind of before you get back to your house, right? So the work for escalation, if you want to call it work, which is probably not the greatest word for it because, it's fun, but all the things that you have to do as a man, and very, very rarely will you find a woman who will make things happen for you. And if you do, I mean, that's great. But a lot of Japanese girls especially are not going to do anything for you. So they're kind of expecting you to lead and make everything happen, right? So the work for escalation begins before you come home. And that consists of things like non-threatening physicality. Sorry, that's what that's supposed to be, non-threatening physicality. That is a bit of a paradox, non-physical physicality. So non-threatening physicality, so you can think of this as something that you could do with your friends, and it wouldn't be weird at all, even like a guy friend or something. So there's things like hand size comparisons, obviously like the guy's hand is going to be bigger than hers. So, make her feel all small and feminine and everything. Earrings or accessory checks, being like, oh, it's, checking out what kind of earrings she's got on, gives you kind of an excuse to get a little closer and touch her hair and her ear or whatever. Accessory checks, looking at her wrist, you can kind of pull her hand in and be like, what's this on your wrist? Or what are these rings all about? Same thing with nails. You can be like, oh, show me your nails. And you kind of can pull her hand in a little bit. It gives you that little bit of physical contact without kind of tripping any alarms, right? Other things you can do, height comparisons, if you're standing up, or you can even get her to stand up. You may, hey, stand up a second. Like, wait, how tall are you? Like, how many centimeters or whatever? And compare yourself to her. Teaching a skill or a physical activity, such as dancing or fighting. Those are the two that I put up here because I like salsa dancing, and I also like kind of kickboxing or jujitsu or whatever. So, but for you, it might be something else. It could be like the guitar, or even like some, I don't know, cooking skill or whatever it is that you kind of some physical activity that engages both people moving, and you can kind of take the role of a teacher. It can be pretty cool. Playful pushes. swats or smacks. These are all just kind of silly little ways, like pushing her away as a way of disqualifying her, like being like, get your shit together, push. You know, like, why don't you have a passport, right? What are you doing with your life? Kind of push her away or like swat her on the head. Now, obviously, you know, you don't want to do this hard, right? It's just kind of a playful thing, like in the same way that you would, you know, smack your little sister like lightly on the head, like kind of swat her on the head or whatever. Be like, come on now, get your shit together. Right, so that's kind of the first stage of escalations, non-threatening physicality. And this can happen pretty quickly in the interaction, anywhere from a couple minutes into the interaction, throughout the date, or even as you're going home, or even when you got home, right? But this is the first kind of dipping your toes into the swimming pool of escalation, if you will, right? If you guys can hear me, go ahead and type 1 in the chat. It would help me out, just so I know that I'm not just talking to myself. I did get one earlier, but just want to make sure. Yeah. All right, leading physically around. So occasionally guiding her with your hand, or like keeping her safe type behavior, such as walking on the outside of the road. This is a pretty subtle one that I think is pretty cool. Like, girls always respond really well to it. Like if you're walking with a girl on the sidewalk, or especially on a road, you know, sometimes there's on the smaller roads, there's no sidewalk, or and if you just take the outside part, like the part that's in the road closer to the cars or whatever, you know, it's just like kind of a cute little gentlemanly gesture. You can just be like, oh, and you can guide her also to the inside, right? You know, putting yourself more towards the car in harm's way or whatever, and making sure she's safe. It's just a cute little move you can do as you're bouncing her around, and it shows her a little bit that you've got her kind of under your wing, if you will. It also, you know, bridges the gap. You get a little bit of, you know, you can guide her into the inside and everything. So there's that, which is great. Yeah, guiding her with your hand, for example, if people are going through on the sidewalk and trying to pass you or whatever, you can kind of move her around, or be like, oh, watch out, like this person's here. Or, you know, even guiding her through a venue. Obviously, if you go to a bar or somewhere that's quite crowded, you know, you can lead first and just grab her hand, and that's kind of like an excuse or a way to just like move her through the bar by holding her hand, right? So she comes with you, and it creates this kind of bubble of you and the girl, which is, again, great, right? That's what we're going for here, right? Leading emotionally, I talk about this in a few of the videos. So like things like you know, like making sure that you switch up your vibe, making sure you go from light and fun conversation to sort of more real or deeper conversation, and then back and forth, leading her on a emotional journey or emotional tour. Just like if you think of in a movie, you know, every movie has sad parts and happy parts and funny parts, heartwarming parts, and, you know, parts that make you question humanity or whatever, right? Obviously you can move the conversation around through all those emotions, and by doing so, it gives her a wide range of experiences, and also it makes her feel more connected to you because you're going on this journey together over the course of the night. And finally, romantic and sexual discussion, right? So this is the one that I kind of want to talk a little bit more about first, because this is something that it can be kind of difficult to do in another language or with Japanese girls. With Western girls, you can kind of just joke very blatantly about sex. In Japan, you do have to be a little bit more careful. They're a little bit more sensitive to kind of rude jokes. So you don't want to make anything that's too over the top, rude or extreme or anything like that, right? You definitely want to keep things sort of uh, civilized, I guess you could say. You don't want to get, you know, you don't want to have things be too vulgar, basically, right? But there's some ways that you can introduce some romantic or sexual discussion throughout the course of the date as part of your leading emotionally type behavior, right? So, you know, you could talk maybe, let's say, over the course of a 2-hour date or an hour and a half date or whatever. You go to 1 or 2 venues over the course of the night. Maybe you talk a little bit about normal things like your job and her job. You talk a little bit about hobbies. You talk about a little bit about adventure or things, you know, she wants to do in her life, her dreams and hopes, right? And then, of course, you can talk about sex and romance also. So what are some ways that we can get into that? So one note about the sexual tension is if you go for you want it to build and not be broken too soon. So you don't want to go for the makeout or try to hold her hand too soon, or else she'll get everything she needs before you get to the sex location, in this case being usually a hotel or your house or wherever it is you decide to take the girl for, you know, at the end, wherever your end game is, so to speak. So, you know, I just kind of learned this a bit through trial and error, is like making out with the girl. Her, you know, if it was in, you know, a dark restaurant or something, sometimes her guard can kind of go up. And then, you know, it can just be the early end of the night, or in a club or something. You can make out with a girl and she's like, oh, that's what's happening. And then she, you know, she might just want to leave after that. She's like, oh, I got the makeout, I got the fun little romance, but I don't have to actually go through with going back with this guy and all this other stuff, right? Whereas if you keep the sexual tension building throughout the date to the point where she's like, I wonder what's going to happen when I go back to his place. She should be a little bit curious, a little bit nervous, but not like scared or afraid that you're going to not listen to her, you're going to bowl over her, right, reactions or whatever, right? She should be slightly nervous in a good way, but not, you know, afraid of something, right? So you should sort of, there's a kind of like a nice little balance of, you know, kind of leading her there and guiding the interaction there without being overly just direct and just straight kissing her in a restaurant or something, right? Now, of course, you know, feel free to experiment as much as you want. But I've just personally have found that it doesn't help me to make out with the girl or do anything overly sexual before I get to the final location, right? Okay. Right. So the key is to build sexual tension and anticipation. So by doing this, you avoid the friend and provider zone, right? Without crossing the Rubicon, as it were, and breaking the tension. So crossing the Rubicon here, just expression, of course, historical expression where Julius Caesar crossed a river and it meant that he was going to declare war on the Rome and blah blah blah. But the point is it's a point of no return. It's a point where you cross and there your intentions are laid bare, right? And it sort of is a moment, it's an important moment in the interaction, but it's also a moment at which some of the mystery and a little bit of the charm is kind of deflated slightly. Now, ideally by this point, both parties are so interested in the other person that that doesn't matter, but this sort of little mystery about what happens if I go with this guy, or what's, you know, when is he going to kiss me? Is he going to try to kiss me? Is he not? Like, is he nervous? Does he like me? Does he not? That sort of a little bit of uncertainty in her mind is very powerful. And it also makes her feel a little bit more safe to come home with you, right? It's like, oh, this guy can kind of restrain himself. He's not like going crazy, you know, out in public. And if you notice, Japanese people, they don't really make a lot of moves in public. You won't see many Japanese people kissing or holding hands, you know, out in public. It's very much a thing that people do behind closed doors. So yeah, so this sort of moment of kissing, essentially, or making the actual escalation happen, does kind of change the dynamic of the interaction. It lays everybody's intentions on the table and it clarifies, you know, what this interaction is about. And that's, again, it's important, but it's something that you want to save until you're at the final location, right? Right. So getting back to the verbal bit, given that Japanese girls are sensitive to rudeness and sexual subjects, how can we tactfully broach this topic without, you know, being vulgar or rude or anything like that? You want to ramp it up gradually, right? You don't want to start off the bat with like super sexual things. You kind of want to be a little bit indirect at first, right? So some ways you can do this, you can ask her, oh, what is the worst or craziest thing that you've done, right? Are you an S or an M, right? This is cool in Japan because it's kind of a normal question. And an S and an M, it doesn't like, if the girl says she's an M, like, don't think that she's like, she's like wants to be in a gimp suit and like get whipped or whatever, whatever, right? And same as she's an S, like, don't think that she's gonna like put her heels on your face and like whatever, whatever you might imagine, like in terms of BDSM. It's usually not at all that extreme. In fact, what you could best imagine this means is if she's an M, it means that she's not going to make any moves and she wants you to lead the interaction. And maybe, she'll pretend to kind of, like pull back. She'll be like, what? I can't do that. Like, what? But she actually does want you to go through with it, right? And if she's an S, it might mean she's a little bit more confident, a little bit more forward, and she's happy to go, to maybe make some moves a little bit. But most girls are going to say either M or they're futsu, like average, right? I always kind of like roast them a little bit if they say they're futsu. I tell them that's a pretty boring answer, right? You should pick one, right? Another way you can start kind of the verbal escalation is to tell stories, right? You can tell stories. One of the things I like to talk about is, like some of my past experiences, like things like having sex on the beach in Okinawa, or, like hooking up, coming across and finding my friends passed out on the highway, like in the middle of the highway, drunk as skunks, like one guy with his pants down, but like not actually having sex. I guess they fell asleep partway into the having sex part of things, but it was a pretty funny experience. So yeah, like really kind of silly stories, or stories about like funny sexual experiences, or strange ones, whatever you might have. These are, or you can even be about friends, or you can hear, even theoretical things like about news, that sort of thing. Or you could say like, what would you do? Like, what would you do if, you were at home with a guy and his girlfriend came home, or something like that. Hypotheticals are good as well. When was your first boyfriend, or when was the first time that you had sex? And the way that you could say this is hajimete no kareshi, or to put it even shorter, hatsukare, or hajimete no echi shita toki wa nansai, like how old were you when you first had sex, or hatsu echi, and the H just means echi, which means sex. You could also say like hatsu sex wa nansai data, or just if the girl speaks English, you can just ask her in English. This is kind of an interesting. It's a good like little build up to start with this one. The when was your first boyfriend? Because usually they'll be like, oh, like in middle school or something. And when was the first time you had sex? And it'd be like maybe like a little later, or it might be that first guy, and you could talk a little bit more about that. Be like, oh, really? Like, if you're in middle school, like where are you gonna do it? Like, is it at his house or your house? Or like what happened? Like what was the deal? You could talk about the first time you had sex. I like to do this because it's kind of embarrassing. Like the first time I had sex, I couldn't actually properly like get it done, and then like I had my curfew, so I was like running home. It was like it's quite like an embarrassing story, which works well because like I'm quite confident in the interaction with the girl, so it helps to balance out that side, the confident side of myself, with a little bit of vulnerability, if you will, right? By talking about the first time I had sex, how I couldn't do it, and how I was so embarrassed. And if you have embarrassing stories like this, it's fine to tell it, I would say, especially, the more kind of confident you are, like the more you want to deliberately expose a little bit of vulnerability about yourself. You can even kind of build it up and get her like wanting you to tell her the story. You can be like, oh, you start to tell it and be like, oh, no, 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 it's too embarrassing. And then the girl, of course, will be like, wait, no, tell me, what is it? You can kind of milk that a little bit, right? So what's the craziest place you've had sex, right? You can ask her and give her shit if it's not that cool, right? If she's like, oh, like a bed or something, you'd be like, well, that's lame. You could just figure out. The idea here is to sort of get her thinking about sex and move the conversation a little bit towards adventure and fun, and like thinking about things in terms of sexually thinking about you as well in this way, because as she talks about it, she's talking with you, so she's going to start the same feelings are going to kind of project onto you. Are you a maguro? Maguro, of course, means tuna, and it just means Japanese, like a woman who doesn't move in bed, right? Now, a ridiculous amount of girls are maguro, but most of them don't want to say they are for whatever reason. I don't know. A lot of the Japanese girls behave the way they do in sex because of what they've learned from porn, or what other people, what they think is cute to Japanese guys, right? So they think that the Japanese guys want to be the big man who's taking her or whatever, so they just kind of lie there and accept it, right? But in reality, if you tell girls that, you're not really big on the maguro, or you like girls who move around, the girls themselves will start to bring that out to you. They'll like awasete kureru. They will sort of a little bit move to your expectations, and it's kind of cool because that side of themselves that they had previously not shown to people because they didn't think it was as cute will start to come out, and you can kind of pull that more aggressive, more sexually assertive side of her out, which is always good. So you can ask her kind of this in this way, be like, like I heard, that many Japanese women are maguro, or in my experience, many Japanese women are maguro. They just lay there. But in the West, right, women like to move a lot, and they're like, they talk about the sex, and like Western women like to hook up and all this stuff. This kind of cultural comparison stuff is really good, because it kind of highlights the differences, and it clears up the air about what the expectations are for sex, because especially if she's a girl who hasn't been with a lot of foreigners, she might not be sure what you think is good or what you think is attractive or whatever. So it's good to kind of let her know that, and also just it's a good way to kind of give her some shit. If she's maguro, be like, really, you're maguro? Most of the time they're going to be like, no, I'm not. And you can be a little suspicious about that as well. What's one thing that you'd never tell your mom, right? And this is another thing that, like one thing that you've done that you'd never tell your mom. This is kind of another cool thing. You do kind of want, it is kind of useful to dig out these things that that girls wouldn't or haven't told their parents or their close friends. It's kind of cool just to hear those. And if you create the right kind of atmosphere of lack of judgment towards them, then they will feel comfortable to tell you that kind of stuff. So this is just a few options of things that you can do to kind of, over the course of the date, especially if you're at a restaurant or izakaya, or wherever it is you've chosen your date to be, it can kind of spice up the conversation and make it more interesting. And I would say like this kind of conversation is best done, I guess, like towards the second half of the date, right? So the first half you'll be both people will be a little nervous, and like there'll be a little settling in. You'll ask a bunch of normal questions, and then as the night goes on, as you get some food and some drinks and everything, you start to relax. You can kind of ask some of these a little bit more probing questions, right? And it sets the tone well for the rest of the night. Okay, so then we get to actually escalating, and from here on, we're pretty much talking about when you're back at your house, right? I think I got somebody. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're pretty much at this point talking about when you're back at your house. So the most important thing is that you do it, as I was saying, right? At the bare minimum, you should go for it, right? Once again, you want to ramp things up gradually, and we're going to continue with the discussion of the three sort of degrees of escalation. And this kind of goes from this goes from what we were talking about earlier, of non-threatening to playful, or we can call it like a little bit heating up, or flirting even, right? And then finally direct. So we talked a little bit about non-threatening, but here are the things. Here's a few examples again. Again, it's things which could be conceivably done among friends without awkwardness, right? So even among like guy friends or whatever. Accessory inspection, size or height comparison, palm or hand reading. And it doesn't even matter if you don't know, what it means. I like to just make stuff up. I'd be like, oh, this means that you hate dogs, or you were a dog in your past life, or whatever, right? I mean, obviously, like if you know where like the lifeline is, it's like the thumb line or whatever, the sim min sen, and then like there's like the kick going line. It can be interesting to at least know a couple of things, but you can even just literally make everything up, or look at it very intensely and be like, oh, you're gonna die, right, or whatever. It's just like it's just a way to have fun with the chick, kind of play with her in a way that is physical but non-threatening, right? So we have flirting, or playful and heating up, right? Things like tickling, push pull, literally just pushing and pulling her in, kind of like giving her a little hug and then pushing her away, massages, that sort of thing. And we'll see some examples of this in a second. Finally, direct, which is hooking up. So kissing, the lips or the neck, and sex. Yeah. So let's get into these. Escalating to sex. One thing, I sort of mentioned this at the beginning, but the first kiss is not something that you need to build up into this huge deal. In fact, if you're really nervous about it, it's probably like it's going to backfire a bit. So you can think of it as something to just kind of get out of the way, almost like get the first kiss out of the way so that you can have the second kiss, and then that's the one that's going to like work or whatever, right? So the first kiss, you can think of it as a message, right? This is like you're stating your intentions through your actions for the first time very, very clearly, right? Your intentions are laid bare, as it were. It may not always work, and by work here I mean like you kiss her the first time, she melts in your arms, and you escalate to sex right there. In fact, a lot of the times they're going to kind of pull away a little bit, right? And that doesn't mean they don't like you. If they didn't like you, they wouldn't come in your house, or after you kiss them, they'd be like, okay, I really got to go, right? And even then, they might like you a little bit, but maybe just not enough to hook up with you that day for whatever reason. But so if they pull away a little bit from the kiss, don't worry about it. Don't freak out too much. Just think of it as a good thing that you have finally like cleared the air. You've broken the tension. You've crossed the Rubicon, right? You've sent the message of the first kiss, which she has now, she now knows where you stand, right? Which is a good thing, right? When you're in their house, right? Or a hotel or wherever. You want to move from thinking of escalation as a binary yes or no game to thinking of it as being like a fluid dance, where what is said may not be 100% true, right? So for one example is, I'm on my period, right? And no one move makes or breaks it. Rather, it's give and take, right? It's push and pull, it's give and take, it's a dance, right? There's no, like, so the kiss, it's not like, I'm gonna go for the kiss, it didn't work, oh, okay, there goes the night, right? It's more of like kind of a fun little back and forth, right? And the way that both parties kind of react and interpret what is going on is going to dictate whether it does end up in sex or not. Okay, so yeah, this example, I'm on my period, you hear this, and sometimes it's true. Sometimes they actually just are on my period, and other times it's just not even true. Like they'll say it, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's not, whatever, it's not a big deal. And then later, a couple, 10 minutes, 20 minutes later, you're about to have sex with them. You pull off their pants, they don't even have a tampon or like a pad on. You're like, you think back, you're like, wait, you lied about that, right? But it's not. I mean, it's easy to kind of think this is like, a bad thing or whatever, but it's more like just a random thing that girls kind of throw out. Like girls just have these sort of automatic objections that they kind of spit out without really thinking about them too much, right? If they have a serious objection, they're obviously going to let you know. They're really just going to kind of push you away and be like, no, 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 stop, right? And then that's fine, right? Of course, you should stop at that point. But for a lot of things that they say, it's just sort of, it's almost like they're testing the water, right? They want to make sure, that they have a way to escape, that you're going to listen to them, right? If they really do want to leave. And in some ways, they're just kind of used to throwing out these things to see what the guy does. To see, is he going to continue? Is he going to push too hard? Or is he going to be like firm but, responsive, right? That kind of thing. So it's a give and take, right? All right. So getting to the common objections. So dealing with objections, we want to first mostly just kind of ignore it or brush it off, right? If possible, right? With humor or something like that. So if she's like, oh no, I can't, I have a boyfriend, you'd be like, oh, it's okay, like I'm gay, right? And then just take out your penis and whatever, right? So you can kind of ignore it, right? For one time, right? Or do some sort of nonsensical way, right? But if she keeps bringing up the same objection, you obviously have to kind of deal with it at some point, right? Deal with the issue logically. This is the second option. You don't want to automatically get caught up in whatever she's saying. You don't want to take it too seriously at first because, as we just mentioned, it might not even be a real issue, right? She might just be saying it, right, for no particular reason. Yeah, so one is the best response to begin with, and often the issue will just dissolve, right? So she's like, oh, I'm on my period, and you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then you just continue escalating, right? She might not even say it again, right? And the easiest way to sort of ignore or brush it off would be like, just either repeat what she says, be like, oh, on your period, and then just continue escalating. Or she'd be like, daijoubu, it's okay, right? It's okay, and continue escalating, right? And a lot of times, as it says, yeah, the issue will just dissolve, right? Sometimes, though, she'll keep saying it, and you can kind of tell that it's maybe a little bit of a bigger issue for her, right? So, secondly, it's useful. The second mode of dealing with it logically is useful if the issue or objection seems to be legitimate or a big deal for the girl. But you got to be careful not to reify the objection with too much discussion, right? So a way that you could logically kind of deal with things, like for example, with the period example, is you can be like, okay, well, it doesn't bother me, right? When I date girls long term, of course we have sex on their period. It's not a big deal, really. It's not. I don't think it's gross. I don't think it's weird. It's pretty normal, right? You could be like, yeah. Then you just keep going with it. But at some point, sometimes you can kind of, if you talk too much about it, if you try to deal with it too much, it can reify the objection, make it stronger in some ways, right? So it's kind of a little balance, right? You obviously want to just, if possible, just kind of brush off whatever her, objection is. But if she presses the issue, you want to deal with it logically. But you don't want to spend a long time getting to this long moral debate with her for, tens and 20 minutes or whatever. So you want to say your piece and then get back to the escalation, right? Over the course of this, you want to be sure to be non-judgmental. So expect her to play around, right? And this means to hook up, right? Be like, of course, girls hook up, right? Young girls hook up, they play around, right? I get it, I understand, right? And expect her to be that, right? Expect her to be that kind of girl. And if she's not, you can be like, well, what? You don't? That's really weird. Like, everybody plays around, right? Speak from your experience or knowledge, right? So you can say that, well, in my experience, my ex-girlfriend, all of my girlfriends have hooked up with me on the first date or whatever, right? In my experience, Japanese girls seem to say that they don't want to hook up, but they actually do, right? Or whatever. Finally, assert your reality while understanding why she might think what she thinks. So you say, okay, this is how it is for me, right? I don't know how it is when you're with other guys, but when you're with me, it's different, right? At the same time, you understand why she might think that. I understand you're trying to protect yourself, or I understand you're that's the normal way of dating, right? But this is not a normal relationship, right? It's going to be better than that, right? Okay. So here are some objections. One is, I just met you. It's too fast, right? Especially if you're pulling girls right off the street or even on the first date. They're gonna be like, oh, I just met you. It's too fast. We can't do this, right? Well, we'll go through the how to. Should we do it first? All right, let's just keep going. I only have sex with guys who are my boyfriend, right? These are all things which say, I have a boyfriend. Sometimes they won't say anything until you start kissing, and then they're like, I have a boyfriend, right? You're a try, or you're a player. I'm on my period. I'm not that kind of girl. This is Japan. Girls in Japan don't do this, right? So chances are you've heard one or many of these, at least one of them, I'm sure. or many of them before. So how are we going to deal with these? Well, of course, at the beginning, you're going to be like, you just brush it off. So if she says it's too fast, she's just like, oh, it's hayai, or like, it's really fast. You can be like, yeah, hayai ne, and then just continue undressing her or whatever, right? I only have sex with guys who are my boyfriend. You'd be like, oh, okay. Continue undressing her, right? Same with all of these. So the first response is just to kind of brush it off or ignore it and continue, right? See if it's a real issue for her or not. If she brings it up again, you can start to use words or logic to kind of deal with the objection. So the first one, I just met yours too fast. You can say something like, well, life is short, life is fleeting. You should make the most out of every day. And yeah, it's important to just live life in the moment. Blah, 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 blah. You can keep going with that. I only have sex with guys who are my boyfriend, right? Okay, well, everybody has to start somewhere, right? Everybody has to start somewhere. And you can say, I only girlfriend girls, I only date girls who I have sex with. I only become girlfriends with, I only become boyfriend, girlfriend with girls who I hook up with, who I have sex with, right? Just flip it around. I have a boyfriend. You use a varying ways of dealing with this. You could say like, oh, well, I have a girlfriend. I have a wife, whatever. Or you could say something like, well, that's fine. We'll keep it a secret, right? You can use illogicality as well. You can be like, I also have a boyfriend, right? Okay, you're a try or a player, and with this, you can do whatever. You can just be like, yes, and continue undressing them. Or you can be like, yeah, well, I like to see how compatible we are sexually, because sexual compatibility is very important, right? That would be like aisho, right? Seiyoku no aisho ga taisetsu. I'm on my period. Yeah, we sort of dealt with this one already. You can either like lay down a towel or go to the bathroom, the shower or whatever. I'm not that kind of girl, right? This one is kind of like, it's a little vague, so it's kind of tricky. But yeah, like you don't want to get too caught up in wondering what kind of girl she is really. But yeah, I'd say for this one, you can just kind of keep things casual and be like, yeah, it's fine. I understand. Maybe you've had a kind of more serious background or whatever, but I kind of move fast in my life and my decisions and my choices. So yeah. Or again, the same thing with like sexual compatibility is really important to test for. And I'm happy, I want to see you again. I want to hang out with you again. I want to take you on a date next time as well. But sexual compatibility is quite important for me, that sort of thing. Finally, this is Japan, right? They love to tell you how things operate in Japan, and often they're just sort of regurgitating what the common narrative is, which doesn't really account for how things actually pan out, how people actually hook up. For the most part, people really do hook up a lot in Japan. So you can be like, well, that's crazy. In my experience, Japanese people always hook up on the first or second date or whatever. I had a bunch of friends who went to university in Japan, and they all said the same thing and everything like that. So yeah, once again, most of the ways I've dealt with all of these objections have been in these three, being non-judgmental, right? Speaking from your experience and asserting your reality, while at the same time understanding why she might think like that. So these three are pretty key when crafting your sort of logical or more thought out responses to her objections. So if you choose to deal with it logically, or with a story or a metaphor, pivot away from the issue afterwards and switch up the vibe back to light and fun. So you never want to get stuck logically dealing with her issues forever, right? You want to say your piece, explain, how you feel about the situation, switch the vibe back to fun. And this can be, again, like you can go make another drink, you can stand her up and like do something fun with her for a quick second, or you can just get back to escalation. But you don't want to be stuck in this logical mode, because you can't really hook up with her in that mode. So if you feel stuck, yeah, stand her up, get her doing something else or looking at something else. Here, the quote, motion creates emotion, right? So it's good if you ever feel like you're stuck in something, stand her up, get her doing something else, and looking at something else. All right, cool. End of slides, Q&A time. We're also going to look at a little video I put together of some stuff. So let's see, I wonder what order we should do that in. All right, let's do the video first. Let me see, let me switch. Me again. Let me find the video, 1 second. What? Huh. Okay. How you guys doing? I can't seem to. All right, I guess I'm gonna have to do my whole screen. Whoa, Inception. Okay, here we go. So this is recorded in Fukuoka. It's me and this girl. I just pulled off the street the same day. Actually, she was in Don Quixote, and I just brought her back here after kind of a quick little wander through the park. You can see up here, it's like, I think it's 7:21 p.m. Yeah, on the 8th of April. So it's kind of early in the night still, right? But I met her maybe, I don't know, 6:30 or so. Pulled her back here. But you can imagine it doesn't really change anything to imagine that this was after a date, right? After we've been to a venue or something. It's kind of the same, really, in terms of how I would go through it. And the reason I'm showing you this particular one is because it shows a lot of the things that I sort of went through. And I've put some, sorry for the quality, it's a little bit grainy, but we're gonna just go into it. So here's a strength test. So I'm getting her to just like put power in her arm, be like, how strong are you? Are you like lifting weights or whatever? Just like the non-threatening physicality stage of things. And be like, oh yeah, you seem to have some muscle here, right? A little bit later. And you can see, you can also check the time up here as well if you like. So here I'm getting her to stand up. And I'm gonna, teach her a little bit of basic, whatever, kickboxing or boxing stance, kickboxing stance, right? I'm trying to figure out, because I'm lefty, so I have to figure out what she would do. It's not the same for me. Yeah, this just gets us both standing up. It's like engaging a process. I'm going to be putting out a couple of videos pretty soon about pattern interrupts, but when you're engaging somebody with the process, it allows you to do certain things that kind of slip through subconsciously. And some of those is just basically touching them, right? Touching the girl or whatever. And here you can see, like, I just guide her, right? Like, that's kind of like the guiding thing, right? I'm like, okay, we're done here. Have a seat. It was very, very brief. You could obviously guide them a little longer. But that was like, the same thing you would do is like going through a venue or whatever, is hand on the small of the back and that kind of thing. We sit down, just chill out a bit. Here I'm checking her earrings. I'm like, oh, look, like, you've got earrings there. It was kind of brief, but it's just an easy way to get, like, it's quite intimate, obviously, touching somebody's ear or face. I have this little, I'm going to attack her with. Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of like, it's just messing around, really. But it's also like getting us a little closer to each other and tickling her and everything. Now, this isn't like what I do every single time. In some ways, this is like might be a little bit overkill in terms of like physicality, but I just wanted to kind of show the whole range of things that I've been doing, like this knee tickle thing, leg tickle thing. And she's pretty good at not reacting. I'm like, wow. I don't know what we're talking about here. And here, oh yeah. So I even just tried to kiss her on the cheek, but you can see she's kind of like, she's turning her face away a bit, but that doesn't really matter. Just going for cheek, and I push her away like right at the end of it, right? And again, like, so it's like pull her in and then push her away as on the break. Like after this moment, she's like, okay, he kissed me. Like that's what's happening, right? So, but the first one is not like what's gonna work, right? So this one, just actually straight up kiss her, right? And sometimes if they turn cheek or whatever, you know, you can kiss them on the neck. And that's fine too. Hand reading. And so you can see like I'm not like aggressively like jumping on her and like clinging for dear life and being like, please bang me, right? It's like kiss, kind of pull back. Kiss again, pull back, and like do something else, right? Talk about something else. Switch up the vibe. Making some shit up about her palms or my palms or whatever. Absolutely nothing about palm reading. But the ability to just kind of like relax in between making moves, it puts the girl at ease, right? So she's like, oh, it's okay. It's like it happens kind of gradually. It's like slowly boiling the frog or whatever, right? Like pressing on her tendons to like close her fingers. I think I added this to like the routine thing. I kiss her again this time. She's still kind of like pulling away a little bit, but yeah. But over time, like she's just getting used to like my touch, my my hands and kisses and everything. And at this point, I just kind of like move her on top of my lap. Just like sit her on my lap. And she just kind of like falls over on me. It's so cute. But yeah, like you can tell, like at this point, she's like, all right, like I'm fine with this. Like I'm fine with this happening, right? Must have spilled something on her. Now she's like attacking me with the pig. Cool thing about putting girls on your lap is it like kind of switches the dynamic because they are sort of like they have the power because they're on top of you. They can kind of like move away if they want to, or like attack you if they want to. And finally, moving over to the bed. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the end of this. Yeah, so oops, Inception again. All right, stop. Wait. Okay, yeah. All right, so the everything I wanted to show you in the little escalation video is just kind of the whole culmination of what I've been talking about over the course of this webinar, of all like the non-physicalness, right? It's kind of gradually escalating until it builds up to a point, and making it so that the first kiss is not a big deal, right? Because a lot of times they are just going to kind of turn the cheek or move away, and if they do that, like just kiss them on the cheek or kiss them on the neck or whatever, right? Some girls, for whatever reason in Japan, won't kiss, but they will hook up, which is just quite odd. I have no idea where that morality lies. It's kind of like a hooker, actually, right? But But yeah, so that's also something to consider. Like if she doesn't want to kiss, but she's still just laying there, like just try to take her pants off, right? It sounds really weird, and it is kind of weird actually. But some girls like for some girls like kissing is for boyfriends, but they can still bang you. It doesn't to me. It doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't have to make sense to me, I guess, right? So I've had this with a couple girls where they wouldn't kiss because they're like kissing is for boyfriends, but they just didn't do anything if I take their pants off and I just bang them like that. So it's quite curious, but who am I to judge, right? That's fine with me. Yeah. So yeah, so if they cheek you or if they move away, just like pull back a bit and like do something else, move her around, go for it again, and then maybe even the third time, pull her on your lap or whatever. All of these things are good to kind of get it going over time, right? Cool. All right, I'm gonna unmute everybody and we're going to talk about, and if you guys have some questions, I would love to hear those as well. Let's see. Trying to figure out how to do it. All right. You can also ask in the chat. You can type them out in the chat if you guys have any questions about anything. Question time. I just dropped a lot of information there, so. Nobody. All right. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about, if you guys have questions, I'll ask you again towards the end. A little bit about just like actually physically escalating beyond that point, like once you're already kind of making out with them. Like it helps to have like one leg, like your thigh in between their legs, right? It's like lower barrier or whatever than your hands, right? So, but when your hands go down there, they're obviously gonna they might like defend you or whatever. They might push your hand away. But if it's your thigh, they're not gonna like push it away as much, but it still can kind of like rub them and get them all excited. So if they're kind of like they're happy, like they're laying there, but they're gonna kind of resist if you like make any moves towards their crotch, then you can kind of you can use your knee or whatever to kind of move it a little bit or kiss them on the neck, kiss them wherever possible, right? Obviously, like by the time like you get your finger in, it's pretty much like usually that's the point of no return in the sense that they're pretty much going to hook up with you if you get a finger in, right? But sometimes like up until that point they might be like, oh, let's just stop here or whatever, right? But for the most part, if you put like if you start to finger them, if you get your finger in their pants or whatever, they're going to just be like, all right, well, let's just do this now. So that's like another thing to kind of consider. And yeah, some chicks have different things. Like if she's got a skirt on, it's obviously going to be a lot easier than if she has jeans or whatever. It can be quite difficult to slip in there if their belt's tight. Yeah. Sweet. Does anybody have any questions? You can also type them into the chat if you have any questions. If you don't want to say them out loud, if you don't want to iterate them. Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Do you have any tips specifically on escalating in karaoke?
In karaoke, like one thing you want to note is like where the camera is, like right when you get in. Like a lot of times it's like on the TV or whatever, and if it is, you can just take your jacket and like cover the camera, right? And that's like so like right when you get in, or like if you're thinking about escalating, just note where the camera is. If it's on the ceiling, you can't really do anything about it. But yeah. And like I like to there's like a few songs that are like kind of escalate songs or whatever. What is it like? There's like that Beatles song which is like oh, like close your eyes and I'll kiss you tomorrow. I'll miss you. Or, I don't know. There's a few songs where it's like you kind of play along with the song. You can be like, close your eyes and I'll kiss you, and then like push them away or whatever. So it's cool to like find those kinds of songs that it's kind of like you can just put them into the list and then use that as like, oh, I'll escalate like during the song, right? Another thing to consider about karaoke is sometimes like they have like the stairwells, right? So like if for some reason it can't go down in the room or she's like really weird about it, you can try to just pull her into the bathroom or also like the stairwells. So those are some other options, right? I don't particularly do a lot in karaoke just because like it's kind of weird with like the glass door or whatever, right? But another thing you could do is like private room manga cafes, right? Where they have like this koshitsu or whatever it's called. There's like a couple. There's a customer cafe in Shinjuku and Ikebukuro. There's like Net Maru, which is in Ikebukuro, and Namba in Osaka. Just like if you find those are is basically what it is, just like a private little room, like a little box with a computer or TV. It's like a manga cafe, but it's a full room, right? And you have a key and everything, so it's very private. That's like a better place, I would say, than karaoke, and it's also really easy to bring girls in there because you're like, oh, we're just gonna like, you know, eat ice cream and watch a movie or something. You know, it's very like low stress bounce or whatever. It's not like, let's go to the Love Hotel, right? So yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
Oh,
Rule
yeah,
of
that
thumb.
covers it.
Cool, cool. Um, a rule of thumb of what is token resistance and when you really have to stop. So yeah, it's a good question. It's obviously very important. In general, I would say like if they're trying to leave, obviously, or if they're trying to like push you off of them, like with like force. Obviously, you can feel kind of like if they're like if they're like lightly like nah, stop, right? Then I would say it's token. But if they're actually like using their power or their strength or muscles to actually push you away, you should probably just back off and be like, like, oh, and at that point, I like to just back off and just be like, are you all right? Like, like I was having a good time, I was having fun with you, but if you're feeling uncomfortable, like feel free to leave, right? But I want you to stay, of course, right? And say something like that, and usually like it kind of clears the air a bit, like they feel like they have a way to leave, right? You can kind of think of chicks as like gazelles almost, right? Like they always want to have like a route to escape from. Like, they're always kind of like watching, right? They never want to be like backed into a corner where they have no way out, right? So sort of by saying that, by being like, oh, are you all right? Like, then they feel like, oh, this guy, even if I say it, right, he's going to listen to me. So that's kind of, I guess, a rule of thumb. That said, it can be kind of tricky, right, with Japanese girls, right? Because again, some of them are pretty right? So they do kind of want you to push, right? And Japanese guys are like really aggressive, right? Like, I mean, like even if like you can see them like outside love, like I used to live around love hotels, and you'd see them like pulling, like forcefully pulling girls into love hotels, and she's like, no, 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 right? And they're like, oh, it's okay, and and, it's like they're doing some pretty intense stuff. And I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not saying do that, but um, yeah, definitely it helps to sort of like say that kind of thing, and the kind of feeling like if they're really pushing against you, right? And it's also important to note, like, if they're pushing against you or if they're just trying to stop your hands from going down their pants, right? Because that's kind of a different thing, right? They might be like happy to just kiss you, or like let you feel up their boobs, but as soon as you start trying to get in their pants, they're like, whoa, wait, and then they try to grab your hands, right? So yeah, it can be kind of tricky because it's like a weird little line. Like if you can very quickly just like slip your hand in and get it in there, like get it inside of them or whatever, you're like, okay, it's already in, and they're like, all right, fine. So it's kind of like a tricky little thing. Obviously you never want to push things too hard, but a lot of these girls are like they are kind of M. So do what you're comfortable with. Just try to obviously leave these girls with leave them better than you found them, right? Like a national park or whatever, right? Yeah, and then that should be good. Making sure they always feel like they can leave, right? Yeah. So I guess I would say that was my rule of thumb. Anything else? Escalating towards threesomes. Yeah. Yeah. So like threesomes, I guess. Do you mean like two girls or two guys or both or two girls? Well, I mean, assuming you have them both back in your house, it's good to get them on this on the side. I would say to try to get them to hook up with each other a little bit. Just be like, oh, have you ever kissed a girl, right? And be like, oh, back in my country, it's really normal for girls to play around in university and kiss each other. It's like every girl experiments, or right. What about in Japan, right? So that again, that kind of cultural comparison is good to do. You can do the O-sama game or whatever, which is putting a bunch of pieces of paper in a. I guess you can't do it with just three people though, huh? Yeah, I do it with two guys and two girls. Just basically putting pieces of paper like king and then 1 and 2 and 3 into a hat, and then pulling out numbers, and then saying this person has to do this to this person and this person or whatever, right? I guess you could do it with 3 people. You would just have to give the Osama a number as well, if that makes sense. Like you have everybody draws, and then one person is the Osama and a number, and then the other 2 people are the other 2 numbers. So that was someone would maybe sometimes give themselves like a rule or whatever. I think you might be able to do it with 3 people, but yeah. So getting them to kind of start hooking up with themselves. Obviously, if you can get them to kiss, you'd be like, oh, just chew with her, right? Just chew, right? Like a little kiss. And then be like, oh, that looks like fun. I want to do it too, right? Or talking, just again, doing all these things about talking about sexual experiences. Be like, one time I did this with these girls, or my friend did this with these girls, and have you guys ever done something like that? Kind of building it up verbally and physically over the course of the night. Obviously, you do have to isolate them first, right? Bring them back together first. I had some really weird threesomes, like one in the Philippines where they're really Catholic, right? So they both came to my room, but then they wouldn't touch each other at all. They wouldn't even I couldn't even get one to touch the other one's boobs or whatever, right? It was really weird. So it was basically I'd have sex with this one, and then I'd have sex with this one, right? It's it didn't really feel like a threesome because the chicks weren't they wouldn't kiss or anything. They were like, no, that's crazy, right? They're religious, they'll bang, but they won't kiss their friend. It's weird. Yeah. Yeah. Other things you could be like, have you ever seen her naked? Have you ever gone to an onsen with her or whatever? Have you who has bigger boobs, and compare it, or who has a nicer ass, and then compare it, and then be like, oh, I'll be the judge, right? And yeah. Yeah. It works. Yeah. Yeah, but these kind of things, just have fun with it, mess around with the chicks. Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Any other question? Yeah, the Osama game is pretty magical for kind of group situations. If you have a wing that you like, and you get along with well, you just bring 2 girls back and yeah, hook up with them both, and switch girls afterwards, or get into some antics. Yeah. Yeah. It can be easier to pull 2 girls than one, because they feel kind of safe together. Yeah. It's a bonding experience for them. You can be their bonding experience. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Hit me up. Do you change tactics if they're ticklish? I'm worried it feels bad for them. So the question is, do you change tactics if they're ticklish? I sometimes worried it will ruin the mood if it feels bad for them. Like if they're like really ticklish, if they're like, wait, no, stop, then yeah. But it's not like I'm never gonna tickle them for that long, really. It's like a couple like and then like kiss them or something, right? I'm not gonna like do any like epic tantric tickling sessions or anything, right? It's just a brief little tickle, right? And then start to hook up with them, right? Yeah. But yeah, as with really any of the things, like you never want to do that thing for too long at all, right? So like in that video that I showed you guys, it was like I was doing like a lot of the things that I'd been talking about over the course of the webinar, like with that one chick, but none of them was like too long, really, right? Because like a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. It's like a tapas or something, like a little appetizer plate of physicality, right? Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes like that, again, that video is like kind of like a lot in terms of physicality. Like a lot of times it's not even that intense, right? Yeah. No. Oh, so you mean if they're ticklish to touch in general, it's hard to escalate without triggering it, right? Oh, I see what you mean. Like, yeah. So I guess it can be kind of an excuse, right? Like they're just pretending to be so ticklish that they can't have sex or whatever. Yeah. I've run into something like that, right? It's kind of weird, right? Like it definitely is like an excuse. Like they're just saying, "Oh, it's ticklish, stop," right? Yeah. You there's no like obviously you're not gonna like unticklishify them, right? It's mostly just I just kind of don't really believe it, but like I'll be like, oh, it's okay, and then just keep doing it. Obviously, you can't bang them without touching them, so it's kind of yeah, you do have to just keep escalating, really. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Cool. Anything else? We have time for maybe like one more question. If anybody's got something. Seems like somebody can't watch it on YouTube. Huh. That's odd. Do you do dirty talk in Japanese? Yeah, sometimes. Like, you know, like lick is like nameru or namete. Like, you know, like putting it in all the way or whatever, right? Like okumade, like okumade. Yeah, but sometimes I'll get them to like say stuff in English, which I think is kind of hot, right? Especially if like the less English they speak, the hotter it is, right? Yeah. During escalation, not usually. Oh, that's actually a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned that because, like the one thing that I do say, and this is like, it's kind of like a Japanese thing. Is like this like you'll see it if you watch like Japanese porn or whatever. Is like making them feel like ashamed about like the fact that they're turned on, right? Like, you know, if you feel like if you slip your hand in, you'd be like, oh, it's so wet. Like, what? Why are you so wet? Like, what is this? Ooh, are you turned on? Right. Like as almost as if like you've discovered their little dirty secret or whatever, right? You'd be like, it's so hot down here. Like, why is it so hot, right? Or humid. It's so humid. Like, yeah. That kind of like making them feel a little bit ashamed of their sexuality. It sounds really weird, and it's kind of against, to be honest, kind of against my own like morals, right? In a certain way, in the sense that nobody should feel ashamed about being turned on, obviously, right? But it does kind of like, they're like, yeah, how you guys see, whatever, and it has like a good effect, I guess you could say. So yeah, to that degree, right? To that degree, or like doing other things that like they'll be like kind of like sort of grossed out about. Like if I've just been fingering them, just like lick the finger or whatever, and they'll be like, no, stop, don't do that, right? That's kind of an extension of like the making them feel ashamed in like a fun way. Yeah. Cool, guys. All right, so that about wraps it up for today. I believe this replay will hopefully I'll figure it out. I'll post a link. I think it's the same link for the YouTube that it will go up on YouTube. So if you want to watch it again or watch parts of it, I will probably also upload the escalation video that I showed you separately as well inside maybe the escalation section or something, right? I'm here in Tokyo still for another maybe half week or a week. And then I'm going to try to upload a bunch of stuff. It's really hard to upload stuff because I'm just jumping around, obviously between cities, and then staying at like friends' houses sometimes and Airbnbs and all that. So it's quite difficult to upload stuff. So I have a whole bunch of footage and stuff that I'm going to upload as much as possible as I can while still in Japan. But a lot of it will start coming up when I go to Thailand, which will be I think next Monday or Tuesday. So after that, I'm going to be like full time, holed up, shacked up, editing videos, creating new content, uploading stuff. So a lot of the courses and modules are going to start getting a lot more videos probably within the next week or so. So you guys can look forward to that. And yeah, and we'll have I'd also like to start scheduling Skype calls with you guys. I'd like to, like hear a little bit more about you guys and like what you're up to and like what sort of like girls you're interested in, where you want to meet them, and if you have any questions for me that you want to ask me privately or whatever. So definitely, like, for sure, do join the line chat. If you haven't already, it's in the welcome tab of the course. Definitely join the line chat. Also, yeah, from there, that's probably the best place to just hit me up online. Be like, yo, like, I want to schedule the Skype call, and we can schedule that. Like, again, once I'm in Thailand next week, I should be free like pretty much every day most of the time. So I can really, like, whatever time is good for you guys, we can set up a call on that, and bring questions, bring whatever. You can show me text messages if you have screenshots you want to ask me, like what kind of things to send or whatever. Whatever you want, we can do that. So yeah, I'd like to just get to know you guys a little bit better, get to know kind of what your thoughts are, or if you had any questions or anything like that. So yeah, let's schedule those two. Again, as always, you can reach out to me. Also, line is the best place, but email as well works. If you have any questions or anything you want to know, or also any like videos or content stuff you would like to hear more about, yeah, definitely let me know. Cool. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming. As I mentioned, I'll put the replay link up. I think it's the YouTube link. It's going to be the same link, I believe, but I'm not sure 100% yet. Cool, guys. I hope you liked it. Thanks for coming. I'll see you guys next time.